Hey everybody, and welcome to my daddy's great sermons number 22. This is my dad, Reverend William David Deering. Wanted to preach ever since he was little, and even after mom went to heaven, he's still preaching strong in Pennsylvania. And I'm down here in Tennessee giving a little YouTube intro for my daddy's great sermons number 22. And today I'm not going to say too much, just that my dad talks a little bit about Mary of Magdalene, but also he introduces Cliff, my brother-in-law. And what a great testimony. He's actually married to my little sister now, Sandy, and how God orchestrated that also. But let's listen now to my dad and how he introduces Cliff and how Cliff does such a great job giving his testimony and how he finally felt that redemptive power of God in his life to ask God for help in his life. And we'll see how he went from jail, from the pits of his life, and how God slowly brought him along, and how he accepted Jesus, and how that transformed his life into a new beginning. So here we go, Cliff's testimony.
By herself. And she's standing by the tomb weeping, and the person that she thought was the gardener in charge of the cemetery stood up beside her. Of course, she couldn't see him. Began talking to her. And finally, he spoke her name, Mary. And she recognized that. She had already said to the gardener, "If you have taken my Lord away, tell me where you took him, so I can go get him." This was all by herself. I want to go get my Jesus. To me, that was one of the most longing expressions of love and acceptance of Christ ever uttered. Marvelous statement of faith. She already demonstrated it here at this feast that had been prepared for Jesus. She knew that all the local authorities were looking for Jesus so they could execute him. She was not scared like the apostles were. With great boldness, she knelt, washed his feet with this expensive ointment, and then dried his feet with her hair. She came to Jesus. Coming to Jesus will always be the most significant single function that occurs in the heart and life of any Christian. When I was a little kid, my parents worked real hard at getting all the children. Usually there was about 150 of them in the Sunday school. They worked very desperately hard to bring all the children to Jesus. And when they came to Jesus, the next thing they were expected to do was to stand up and give their testimony, tell the people in the congregation what had happened to them. And this was typically among children from the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, from there on up. And it was an exciting time for us. I forget what I said, but I'm sure it didn't really break any records. But I thought I'd do something today a little different for you, okay? How many of you have gotten to know my son-in-law? Okay, there's quite a few of you that raised your hand. Well, I don't know how long ago it was when he came to know Jesus. Just a couple of years ago, or?
A little further back than that.
How many years?
I took
About 16 years ago. Well, that's still fresh enough for us to listen to it today. Come on, Steve.
Cliff.
Cliff.
I believe in the power of positive thinking. I also believe in the power of negative thinking. I get it. It's redemptive, healing, loving power. But there's also a malignant, destructive power out there. I believe in a higher power. I believe in God, a creator. It wasn't always that way. But believing in a higher power, I have to believe in a lower power. And I know how dangerous, how insidious that lower power can be. I've heard and been around that laughter from just that side of hell. Pain can be very, very subjective. A new normal. What you deal with may be nothing for the next person, but it's everything for them. And I get it. So when people ask me, oh, you had a come to Jesus moment? No. He wasn't lost, I was. I was found. So when people speak to me and say, what turned it around for you? I can't tell you that I was hit by a bolt of spiritual lightning or my moral compass was reset, some radical transformation overnight. Didn't happen that way. It was a process, and it wasn't easy. So one of the things I wanted to do was, I had said to Sandy, I'm pretty private. I don't talk about this with a lot of people. When I do, I go about it very, very quietly. So I said, hey, my life story, I'll get them. No, you know what it is? These are notes I took from an OSHA class. Safety, on the job, construction. But you know what? You come down to it when someone says, how do you get to know Jesus? How do you get to know that word, that living word, the inspired word of God? Faith and practice. I turned to the Bible. I turned to other sources. I wanted to know. It's not like I grew up some heathen or some pagan. This is a Bible that my parents presented me in 1969. I didn't read it. I was a punk kid who had all the answers, who was too smart for his own good. I had some, like everyone else, some trauma and tragedy that occurred. I turned and ran the other way. I really didn't care. And progressively, here we go with a process. The time it took for me to wind up becoming the kind of guy I was, it wasn't overnight. So that healing, redemptive power that I turned my back on, it took years. So 1969, I'm a 9-year-old kid. I was caught up in stuff that I don't even like to talk about, but you know what? By the time I was 16, I was locked up. My father was a Quaker, my mom was a Presbyterian, we went to a Methodist church. I graduated from my Catholic church, or Catholic school. Long story short, don't tell it, but for our purposes, I'll go there and say crime, drugs, debauchery. Oh, I look back now. If I could dive through a time portal, I'd go back to around that period. I can't. But what I can do is tell you this. I found this in a thrift store. It's a clock. And on this side is the poem about the 2 footsteps, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. Who propped me up? Who carried me? Who was there when I needed him? I didn't see it that way. I used up my 9 lives before I was 18. There's no good reason for me to be above ground right now with any options. But I have them, and I know why. So I can sit here and turn around and tell you there's no battery in the well. I have it set for 11 o'clock. When people talk about the doomsday clock, the 11th hour. We don't know. Here today, gone tomorrow, the body's merely a shell. What do I know? I know this much. I'm not promised the rest of the day. But what I can do is do my best to pass on to other people what worked to to turn my life around. And for me, getting to know Jesus. So here I am with the old rugged cross, a simple little wooden cross that I have sitting in our home, right out of Galatians, the fruit of the Spirit. Loving, redemptive, healing, powerful. If we let that occur for us. So when I turn around and say to you, 16 years ago, my misspent youth into my 40s, where was I? You know where I was. I was incarcerated. Wasn't the first time, obviously, but it was the last time. When I reached a point where I knew I felt broken. There was nowhere to turn, and I wanted to turn it around and do something about it. I didn't know how, and I couldn't do it by myself. So I asked. I hit my knees and asked. And that's when that process began. And it wasn't easy, and it took time. But I'll never forget, it was 16 years ago, I went down to the chapel, and I would never go. Here we go with, I wanted to be forgiven, but I didn't have a very forgiving heart. I didn't want to be around the homosexuals. I didn't want to be around the pedophiles. I didn't want to be around tick, 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 tick. That's where they congregated. So it was a good excuse. And if you're looking for excuses, you'll find them. And that was one of mine. You think I'm going down there? Yeah. Well, I went. And there was a man down there who came in prepared with a text, a sermon for us. He said, I can't do it. He said, I've never seen so many sad faces in my life. He said, I've been doing this for decades. He scrapped it. He said, I have one message for you. Easter, 2003. He said, I hope each and every one of you can find it within yourselves to open up your hard hearts and let God massage them before it's too late. I took that to heart. I took a lot of things to heart. And I began to look. I wanted to know about the life of Jesus. I really didn't. I looked on a cursory level, but skimming it is not the same as I wanted to dig in. And at that time, I never heard of Lee Strobel, the Washington, the reporter who was an atheist, whose wife was going to church. I'll say a prayer for you. He said, for what? He eventually wrote a book, A Case for Christ. He turned his powers of observation, and he dug in. And A Case for Christ is now, it's still on the bestsellers list. He travels around the country. Travels around the world, I should say. But he states a good case. So I turn around and I believe in the power of prayer. I believe in all these things that I've been talking to you about. And I sat here and I thought, public speaking is not easy. And not a lot of people get up and say too much. And I don't judge people. I get it. You don't feel, you're not feeling it? It was like the comment Bill made regarding how many of you know my son-in-law. I'll always hold this place, not just in esteem, because it's a place of worship and a house of God. We got married here. And so many of you welcomed us with open arms as strangers. And it's the kind of place that I chat up. Old Stagecoach Road in Albrightsville, a real country wedding. And the fact that Sandy and I reconnected after, at that time, almost 30 years. Who knew? The finger of God has traced its way in my life, all my life. So I'm standing here kind of burning you out. But I took a minute to jot a few things down because I thought, I get up there, I vapor lock, whatever the case may be. But the point being, was it important enough for me to want to do something? It was. I could have come up here for 2 minutes and, spit it out that fast. Thank you. I believe. Move on. And I don't want to sit here and burn you out and bore you, but the truth of the matter is, like most of us, it isn't easy. It's not a walk in the park, and we're challenged, and we struggle, and I fall short every day, but not the way I did when I was younger. Why? Once again, I have what I need. I have a small circle of people in my life, and truthfully, I'm barely acquainted with any of you. We've asked a number of you, hey, come on over to the house, break bread with us. I call it the Rancho Sandy Grande, the ranch. We're outside, we feed the birds. But the point being, we feed you too. And there are people, I'm looking down here now, I prefer to use the word God-loving over God-fearing. I don't fear God. I love God, and I embrace Him. And I want to see that in other people, because I get it. I get how hard-hearted I had become and what it took for me to turn around and say, I don't want to be this guy anymore. And I saw it working in other people's lives. I volunteered as a tutor. English as a second language. Became a peer assistant, a teacher's aide. And I saw it working in other people's lives, because you know what? Early on, I wasn't feeling it. They say, fake it till you make it. I hear people say, it's a cop-out. No, it's not. A lot of times, if you've been in shutdown mode, not for days, weeks, months, but years and decades, it takes time. And when you turn it around and you begin to feel better about yourself, 3 hots in a cot. The head clears, the body begins to respond, but the spirit is still damaged and fragmented. I talk about people having balance in their lives. So here we go with body, mind, spirit. So I used to say. Now that triumvirate for me is spirit, mind, body. And I know every day I have to be vigilant. I don't walk on eggshells, but I know I have to be careful, because if I open that window a crack, a lot of bad things can come in. So the friend I was starting to reference earlier, he always goes with, and he hit me with this, WWJD. If I have any question, what would Jesus do? How would he handle it? As Bill has stated so many times, he came in as a lamb, and the next time he comes back, he's rolling the sleeves up. He's going to be about his business, and some people aren't going to be very happy about it. Me, I try to do my best. We say faith without works is dead. I try to humble myself, check my ego at the door, and if it needs to be smashed down in the dirt, it's not going to get smashed down like it did back in the day. I don't need to go there, because that's not where my head is. And so I'll speak in terms of that Romans chapter 10 that was suggested to me. You believe it? Speak. Be about it. And when someone says, what do you stand for? What you're going to be about it? Be about it. Do it. So, as much as I'll say I try to quietly go about my business, and I do, where I can and when I can, I'll speak up and intervene on somebody else's behalf. I pull for the underdog. I get it. Because a lot of people, that's the way they feel. They built up those walls, they built up those barriers. They've been in that shutdown mode. They don't care anymore. The most dangerous people in the world are the people who don't care about anything. And if you're not thinking straight, you're not going to act right. My father drank a fifth of whiskey every day and never missed a day of work. Exceptionally bright, well-educated man, but you know what? He was like 2 different people. And I saw people who never saw that side of him 10, 20 years, and then they're looking at me like, I was like, yeah, how do you like him now? How do you like me now? But again, if you're looking for excuses, you're going to find them. So I get it. I don't blame people. I don't judge people. Everybody's got their walk. But I get it. The minute I hear you want to do something about it, and 6 months later, you're still, I call it the 11th commandment, thou shalt not snivel. You're still crying about something. What are you doing about it? Have you decided to take the initiative to intervene on your own behalf and take a stand and say, I need help? Give me something. Give me anything. I go there with that because it means a lot. As I'm glancing down here, Jesus did have so many clear messages, but one of the most important I'd have to say is, can you love yourself in a healthy way? And can you love your neighbor the way you love yourself? So if you have a healthy relationship with God, and you really have that communion and you're there, well then, hopefully you'll be in a position to be receptive, continue to be receptive, which I try to be, and I know I need to be. I need good orderly direction in my life in God. And when I see it in other people, I also get the phenomenon that occurs when people go from one extreme to the other. And it's part of the process. I believe it to be true, because I've seen it play itself out with so many people, where they'll turn around and it'll be like, what are you, some paragon of virtue now? Butter won't melt in your mouth? And you're kind of like, no. But I had a few people like, man, you can't save everybody. You know, you try to tackle people and drag them into a 12-step meeting. They don't want to hear it. They're not there yet. But when they are and people are receptive and they want that help, I don't have all the answers, but I know where you can find what you need, and I maybe can help you along the way, sharing experience, strength, and hope. So here we go with, what did Jesus do for us? And here we go with, if I could have dinner with one person, a cup of coffee with one person, it would be Jesus. I'd love to sit down. I got a lot of questions. But I live with mystery, and I have faith, and I practice it. And my walk is reflective in that now. Again, I fall short every day. But the strongest person I've ever met, even though I've never met him, I feel as though I know him, and I've met him, and I've gotten to know him. And I walk with him, if that makes sense. So that song, Amazing Grace, love it. And you're talking about women. Some of the backbones of churches, the backbones of families, the backbones of our society. I turn around and I think of my mom. She went to her grave and felt like she had her son back. And I'm grateful for that. She was alive. She didn't live long enough to see me get out again. But she lived long enough to say, finally. And she was like my little Jimmy Cricket. Bang, 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 every step of the way. Oh yeah, tough old, Billy girl, both of my parents, Depression era, 3rd, 4th, 5th generation. When I think of Jesus and what he did, there's a place out there called the Lord's Gym. It says bench press this. And it shows the figure of Christ with the cross on his back. And he's built, he's buff. And it's like saying, people turn around, tough guys. You know what? He was strong, so strong that he gave his life for us. He put everything out there on the line. But the thing about it was he was strong enough when he dusted his sandals off. He'd come into us, I offer this to you, you don't want it. He kept moving on. And that's what he wants us to do. And he made one of the clear messages for salvation, for the sake of your soul and everybody else. Pass this on. Do something about it. Sandy and Bill celebrating, if you can call it that, but Bill lost his wife a few years ago, Sandy lost her mom. And talk about a servant of God, talk about a disciple, talk about a witness. From what I understand, and I met her briefly back in the day, but she had a presence about her, and some people do. We all do. We all have a light within us, that aura. I'm taking up enough of your time right now, so I'm going to thank you for all that. And that's the legacy that he left for us. So the legacy that Grace Deeren left, Sandy, Bill, continuing to do what he does. And he said this many times to us as a congregation, individually to others. He loves funerals. He thinks that's a time when people are more receptive, they're more open to being able to listen to about the Word and to talk about Christ in action. I agree. I think that's something really special. And it's something, that's morbid, or that's this or that. Maybe we agree and disagree, but the point being, here today, gone tomorrow. The body's merely a shell. In the grand scheme of things, it's a blink. We're here and we're gone. So I'm here with you now and gone. And I will say, there are some people that I've never met, but they've inspired me. And here we go with people like Bishop Fulton Sheen, Billy Graham. And I'm going to end with this one. A lot of you will remember Paul Harvey, the radio show, the author, the rest of the story. Anybody ever wants to hear the rest of the story? Here I am. have a cup of coffee with me, break bread with me. I'd love to hear all your stories too. And I get it. I'd rather sit down with someone privately, one-on-one. But you got to take a stand in life sometime, right? So I thank you for your time. And
Thank you so much for watching today. God bless you. I hope you got so much out of my daddy's great sermons today, which was actually really an introduction to Cliff, my brother-in-law, who did such a great job on showing how God touched him through his family, his mom and dad giving him a Bible when he was younger, and the cross and the 11th hour. And I hope you got a lot out of it. I did. I was crying. It was so beautiful. And God's redemptive power, he just changed his life and married my little sister and orchestrated that 30 years after they met. So God bless you, and have a great week. And if you haven't felt God's redemptive power and love, just ask him in, and he'll help change you. Okay, God bless you. Love you. See you next week.